Everybody's here on time this morning. Wow.
Hello, good morning to you two.
Good afternoon to you. Yes.
Hello,
I
hello.
finished my sandwich, or I can turn my video off if you'd like.
No, it's fine. I need to have breakfast though. I haven't eaten yet.
I just got back from Starbucks and my I forget what I drank. What I ordered, but it was good. Yeah, I like that morning walk to Starbucks. I tell myself it's about the walk, but it's really about the treat. Oh, yes.
Nice.
How you both doing?
Very well.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Me too.
My wife and I have a standing chuckle about, well, our cat loves treats, as most animals
Here
do,
comes Mark.
and all humans do too. So my point.
Hey, Mark. Oh,
So what is the standing joke? Now that you have your mouth full?
That we all love a treat.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yes.
That's why it's called a treat.
Animals, people, maybe even plants do. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I know they love to be lovingly touched.
Yeah.
I get that feedback.
And I can think of the rain as a treat too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We've been getting plenty of it.
Yeah.
Huh?
How are you? Because Santa Barbara was having problems, right?
Problems I don't know about, but I've had to put on boots to go outside. So that says a lot. Yeah. And I'm glad my boots are up to my knees, although it hasn't been that deep. Oh, just got back from Starbucks.
How are you this morning, Mark?
Yeah, pretty good. Um, yeah, got a few things done this morning that I'd been wanting to get off my list, so that feels good.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to understand what you're saying.
Sorry, I probably should speak more clearly. Um, yeah, got some stuff done this morning, which was good. And a friend of mine gave me some pea shoots to grow, and so they've just opened up, their roots gone down, and the first sort of signs of leaves are coming out, which is fun.
Somewhat to grow.
Pea shoots.
Oh, nice. Pea shoots. My mind doesn't automatically switch to vegetable. You get what I mean? Oh. Yeah, my time at Starbucks is a time of reflection. I always have my notebook and I've been going over my life and the things that I've done, because I'm not doing anything now. So I'm surveying what I have done to see the patterns that I have followed to see if I can identify a possible pattern in my current life that I could do something community-wise. Haven't come up with anything though yet.
No
Ooh.
rush.
Yeah, no rush.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience last night. I've been taking a training to learn how to moderate community meetings that are focused on crossing party lines, but, you know, and that's not meant just politically, although everything is political, but to get different people speaking about their different points of view and hearing one another. And it's quite something. Unfortunately, in the class with me are a couple of men who, one has his own podcast, which I listened to this morning, and he was brilliant. And the other one is a psychologist, I think. And so he spends a lot of time with groups of people, you know, and online. And so I'd been listening to their presentation. It's a practicum now, the class. We've been through the raw material. So last night I woke up at 3 and this just came to mind. And I was wondering, well, what do I have to offer? And I started filtering through what we were doing and the kinds of questions that I might come up against, and realized that I do have a different take, and began to understand the character of what I was doing could very easily fit into my capabilities. In other words, stop comparing. This is something that's, you know, I have something very unique to offer. And I hadn't quite gotten around to that adjustment yet. And so it was very, very productive. Luckily, it was over by 4:30, so I could get a little bit more sleep. But I find that's the clearest time to think. I don't know what it is about that time. The rest of the hemisphere, at least, is mostly quiet. I don't know. But it's just a lovely time.
Yeah.
I felt it was very, very valuable.
That's so healthy.
Yeah.
That's such a sign of good health. What you're saying your experience was.
Yeah. And the other message was stop comparing. But I grew up with it. It's been a long time, but stop comparing.
Yeah.
The other guys are good though, because I will, and I've told them that in the class. They're really quite good, so I can learn from them. But I'll never do it quite the way they do.
Well, you don't need to. They're doing their thing, so we need you doing your thing. I mean, yeah.
I always understand what you're saying. You dialogue in a way that is easy to understand for me.
The only problem with this moderating is we're being told it's my place to watch over and guide the community movement through it, and to keep my own thoughts to myself. You know, in other words, I'm not to be additive. And I love telling stories, as you know. So that'll be something I'll have to watch out for. But I do recognize when other people are telling stories, and I can, embrace that and pull it forward, get the whole group, and they're groups of 15 people or so, get them in that mode. So yeah, I began to realize these things last night, which I hadn't taken the time before now to really look at. So that's you, Ani, you got me in the mood of of looking at backstepping, just summing up what's been going on. And I mean, that's good. That's very valuable, almost any time of your life.
The notes I took as you wrote, because when we speak, we create something, and I pick up on what you create when you or anybody speaks. You said that your job is to facilitate, not be additive. And I like that term, that you're not really being asked to add anything, but to facilitate other people speaking. And backstepping, I like that term.
Well, that's what you were describing in my mind.
What?
That's what you were describing in my mind, what you did this morning at Starbucks. Backstepping within your life experience. That's where that came from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I relate to backstepping in a different way, because I often have to backstep when I'm in dialogue with people. I have to keep that in mind to facilitate other people's participation. So I'll be quiet now.
That's okay.
Oh. It's just that there's a lot that goes on inside of me, and and it's all from here, my gut and my heart. Oh.
I was listening this morning to a woman who has spent her entire life with her husband, actually working with people on imagery and understanding how to open up your mind to the images that will help to reconnect you to yourself, basically. So working with trauma folks, very specifically, but anybody, to begin to reconnect yourself, because so much of what our life is about fragmentation. And she speaks of how we're whole, but then through life we become fragmented, and so pulling those fragments back. It's very interesting. Some really short meditations, really, but it's the pictures, not the words, that bring forth that meaning, and the transformation. Frankly, it gives you an entry into a new world, or a new way of understanding and perceiving where you are. And it's just interesting to think about, because we're so caught in words, and we spend so much time explaining through words, and to take a totally different tack, that there's no words at all. It's all about the pictures and the images that come, and how fast that is. Words are very long, take a lot of time and effort to put out and to craft and to understand, and pictures are instantaneous. So she speaks of no time, no place, because it's so fast. So it allows for really fast change, really fast understanding. And I think we don't use that much. We don't. I think that's part of the bliss of stories, actually, is that it creates these images. That's part of storytelling, is creating images. But you can do that even faster when you just image that. I mean, she does use guided things, but the images are so quick and they just hit in a very different spot, than words do. Very interesting. She's got a book coming out in April, we hope, called You Are Not Meant to Die.
Nice.
Yes.
I
So
think.
she works a lot with light.
Oh,
But it's I mean, I so resonate with what you are saying because it's been my discovery in my own work too, is that we always have this choice between living or dying. We always have those choices. And if we're not conscious about it, we often we'll take the death choice. I mean, and another way of thinking about that is that separation, because we're not separated. So every time we cut ourselves off, it's really a bit of death. Creates a bit more anxiety, a bit more discomfort, all that kind of stuff. And so creating situations where we can really choose life and be more conscious of life, more conscious of that connection. Really lovely. Rachel Epstein is her name. So she's got a book out on trauma already, directed at veterans. And the good news is when you have a book labeled "This is work for veterans," that it really resonates for veterans. The bad news is that people who aren't veterans go, "It's not for me." And it can be, because it really can apply to anybody. We all have trauma. It doesn't have to be that grandiose. And sometimes it is, even in our regular life, it can be pretty profound. But the new one is, really different. So I'm really anxious to see what that looks like, because she's filled with all sorts of exercises and things to do and ways of working with yourself. And that book is designed for people to work by themselves on their own issues. So that will be really interesting.
Well, what did you say the name of her book is?
We Are Not Meant to Die.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, my next door neighbor is a chiropractor, and I've been helping him put together a course for
Okay.
elders.
Yes.
And it's called CHA, Conscious Healthy Aging.
Nice.
And the whole idea is very similar to what this woman is working with. That we have that choice in every moment to either choose death-oriented activity or concept or feelings about ourselves, or choose life aspiration.
Right.
And the response has been really beautiful. The people who, and myself too, I love doing these considerations, because as we get older, we don't, I mean, there are things you can't do. And we talk a bit about that. But on the other hand, what is there that we can do, and how much are we looking for it? And, and so we talk a lot about that, finding the flow that would lead us to something that's truly, characteristic of our capabilities and, meaningful to us and so forth, and to stay in that posture, that realm, that environment. Well, I know for a fact that my friend, who's younger than I am, he's about 7 or 8 years younger. It certainly has changed his life just to be so focused on creating this course and giving it. So in that sense, it's been a great success. But it has for me too. So I'm meeting a lot of elder people who are now realizing that, going to Florida to play golf is just a death warrant. And, they're not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
One of the people in this class is older than I am. She's 81 in this moderating class.
Mm.
And the others are no spring chickens. I guess they're in their late 50s or early 60s. So there's this whole sense that society's not going to weed us out. Say, you can't play anymore. You're not youthful. No. That's kind of the energy that seems to be approaching our, being fostered on our two presidential candidates. And there should be a public, discussion about just where are those feelings coming from, other than attack mode. How did we get into that? That wasn't the case. 100 years ago.
I don't think young people have any interaction with older people.
Very
I
little.
mean, it used to be you had your grandparents around, and often now that's not true. They live on the other side of the world. So you don't have an experience of older people. You don't see what they offer. And when you're young and quick, people who aren't quick and don't seem to have the same understanding that you do just seem like they're not, relevant. You don't get an experience of what age does, the wisdom that you get, that you can only get through age. It takes time to get wisdom. You don't just happen on it. And you can't choose to acquire it. It just sort of happens if you're reflective and pay attention. And that there's value in that, which is different than the quickness of being able to do this, that, or the other thing, which is more highly valued when you're young. So, yeah. One of the things she talked about, which is really interesting, is the difference between goals and aims.
The difference between what?
Goals and aims.
Oh, goal.
So I have always had an irritation for goals. I do not like creating goals. When people say that, I just have this initial resistance. It feels so confining and so rigid and so demanding. And it just stultifies me. It just makes it hard for me to feel like I can move. I feel really constrained by it. And that's kind of what she's talking about, because it's a very directed, and it's very me oriented. You create the goals you want. You define what you're going to do. You make a claim to the world that you're going to produce in a certain way. And it's measurable and everybody can see and all of that kind of stuff. But you don't really allow for spirit's interaction, because you're telling spirit what you want spirit to do, basically. And with aims, you're saying, this is the result I want. And then you're open to however that happens. And that fits me. I can do that. And it's not insisting that it happen. It's not assisting that a certain result appear, but the intent is there. And however that intent flowers is fine. And there's a partnership there that you can get in aims that just does not happen in goals. It was just a lovely, lovely discussion.
Yeah. I love the difference that you're bringing out between goal and aim. And for me too, goal is very confining. Goal. It's got to be within this. But aim, come on, that's an adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's participatory. Everybody can contribute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that open exploration, and yeah, very much a journey. Yeah. More fun, more interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It's just,
It'd be fun to play with this a little bit, because one of the things about goals, and I think I'm aligned with you, so I'll start with that. Um, One of the things that people like about goals is that you can then put metrics around them to sort of then have a sense of whether you achieve them or not. And whatever. But then thinking about the equivalent, or in some ways, like what a version of, I don't like the word metrics, but that kind of thing, that the version of aiming and putting some detail or sense of movement, or defining some sense of future position by which it can be sort of measured against. And to me, the first thing is, like, for goals, the metrics are very specific and in some ways like black or white, whereas any type of thing that we might call a metric around an aim is going to be more general, and it's going to be more leeway. But it's not to say that we can't notice movement
yes.
and potentially have some sense for where a movement might be at a certain point in time, but less specifically. And so, interested in any sort of thoughts about that. And then the sort of last piece to that is, when people or groups are so accustomed to the conventional ways of doing things, which are goal and metric oriented, how do they sort of receive this difference and essentially shift to accept something, or even not just accept, but like get really excited about an alternative, and have it still be helpful for them to be doing things, especially doing things as part of an organization that might still be more conventional.
Yeah, what you brought up for me is the difference between measurement and moderation. That you can, and I'm not sure moderation is exactly the word. There's another group that's been having this conversation also, and that there's something about monitoring situations as opposed to measuring them, where you can there's still a quantitative aspect to it, but it's not in the same precise way, and it's also more relational, and there's a sense of personal engagement and responsibility and moderation that is eliminated with the measurement, because you don't have anything to do with that, really. It's all external stuff, and you just notice it, and it fits or it doesn't fit, but you have no, it's 78 degrees. That has nothing to do with you. You can see on a dial what it is, and that's precise, and it is that, but it has nothing to do with you. But if it's moderated, if it's in a range, then you have to be part of that. You have to really be engaged with that. You have to understand your own integrity around that, to be in harmony with that. And that's a different place. And I think that's part of the resistance. We really have a lot of resistance to responsibility, or to that part of ourselves that has to acknowledge the truth of things. We really want to push that out to an authority, to somebody else, someplace else. And it doesn't rest here. And that's been part of the problem. Talk about life or death. If you're not engaged in it, then it's a death thing, because it's only when you're enlivened and you're integrated that it brings the life forth out of you. So we kind of diminish our engagement a lot. and that's not life enhancing. And that's the other part of it, because people say, I don't want death, that's not what I'm after. But if you don't want life, what is it? What's the option? What's the option? What are you really doing? You're not wishing to die, but you're not embracing life, and that's the same thing. That's such a subtle thing. I got that when I was doing my cancer stuff, the real difference between embracing life and just denying it. Not wishing for death, but just denying life. That I'm pushing things off, not doing it, not going there. Those are all ways of eliminating, of becoming less than, not more than. So it's death in another way. Yeah, it's subtle, but it's there, and that certainly was what gave me cancer. I wouldn't say I wanted to die, but I did not feel appreciated in life. And so I really wanted to get away from that lack of appreciation instead of engaging with it. And that was dying. And it was very simple. My body understood that perfectly. I had no problem with it.
What comes up for me as about goal and aim and all of that is, I realize what I do. I'm selective. I steward the framework within. I steward the framework within which I bring anything, everything. It's more about the framework that I hold than it is the specifics of something else. I mean, I don't know that I don't know that I'm being understandable. I mean, I don't know that what I'm saying is easy to understand, but it's framework. If I choose the framework, some things fit and some things, I don't know, but something about framework that determines the dynamics that are happening within it. I mean, like goal and aim and figuring stuff out. It's like, if I can find within myself a framework within which whatever I'm dealing with fits, I'm ahead of the game.
Is there a relationship between framework and context?
They're basically the same. Yeah. Context. But somehow framework is a softer word to me.
Maybe I can add something to that. The idea of framework. For much of my life, I believed that my framework was to work on my own, never to work for anyone else. I proved the lie to that number of times when I was working with people who had established a framework among them where it was a joy to work and you were allowed to take responsibility. And in fact, it was encouraged and even celebrated. And so that dealt a blow to that concept of mine. But it was true that for the most part, working on your own, your own business, it was easier to create that framework for yourself and not have to worry about the UPSs of the world that are using AI to track every movement. And I think it has to do with security, where you place your idea of security. Back when 40 years ago, people were getting jobs delivering the mail because it was a secure position. wages were guaranteed, at a certain level and so forth. And the type of work I was doing was hit or miss and was always interesting. But I was very willing to take, a few years of living close to the ground in order to find the security in that self-expression of what I felt needed to come through me for me to live, properly. It was always a choice. Luckily, I was smart enough, agile enough to be able to make that decision. Some people don't have the option for whatever reason. I didn't have children, for one. But that whole everything seems to pivot on that whole point of security, and people are making their choices around it. What I'm finding is that I'm less abrupt to judge somebody as not having not wishing to take responsibility, but realizing that they've made choices very carefully, and it's usually that fulcrum of security that is what they're working around, because you do have to provide for however many that fall under your protection. So life is a set of a balance of different inputs and possible outputs and energies and lack of energy. So I got cancer twice as well, and it used to bother me. What did I do? But I sort of let that go because, it's the life we live in. It's crazy.
There's many reasons. Yeah.
There are many reasons. And I'll take responsibility for, but the main thing is that I have no regrets about the life that I did lead. And it's gotten to me to this point. And I don't know, I do like to talk. That's one of the reasons I'm taking this course on crossing party lines, because the whole impact of it is that people are speaking from what's real for them. And it's evidently working. I mean, that's what happens in these groupings. And they can be very different from totally different worldviews. It's not just, oh, you're a Republican and you're a Democrat. That may be true, but it goes way beyond in terms of perceptions. And I'm finding it extremely interesting just to see the breadth of what's possible. And learning, because it's so essentially fitting for whoever is speaking. I mean, if they're really speaking from their heart, you can see that it's essential for their being, their way of life. You can say, oh, maybe I can just stop judging people in this particular line of thought, so I think that framework that you brought up, Ani, is very important. People have different frameworks. And then there's a great deal of research showing that, in fact, framework that people actually uphold can very definitely condition their choices in life, including politics. And that each side of the framework, but there are many sides, not just two, but each side of the framework has its own qualities that are characteristics that are very important. And even the research, the tests, these experiments are set up in such a way that they show that people are coming at it from all different sides, and the answer is always in the middle. I don't remember. I would describe one of the experiments if I remembered it in enough detail. I'm not going to plod through it. But the answer was always the Venn diagram, where these thousands of different frameworks intersected. And in other words, we need each other. You know, communities are made up of decision-making by multiples. People, you know, a lot of people, and taking it seriously. This is a whole new way of looking at things for me.
I
I've
like
become the judge. Excuse me, honey.
That's okay. I like the sentence that I wrote down from what you said, that life is a balance of inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
I really like that. I don't know why, but it is.
Well, that's what Kathryn's been teaching
Huh?
about biological life, balance, you know, and it really is working among human beings, but we just don't seem to recognize it. You know, there's so much infighting and, you know, problems about people accepting one another. But if we didn't do that, we might have a real powerful, you know, energy that can be directed toward, you know, recreating this world, or in other words, allowing it to survive.
Robert, what you just triggered for me was something really interesting, because because you're absolutely right. We do have this understanding. We do know how to do this, and we will step outside of that and destroy it because of something that we've got in our mind. And I've seen that over and over again. It's just so weird that we would do that, that we deny our own experience. And we'll climb onto something else for whatever reasons. I mean, we can give rationales for it, but it's just so interesting that that is something humans do. Animals don't. They really go with what they know and believe, and they don't second guess themselves. We will not only second guess ourselves, we'll recreate something that's totally outside of what we actually know and feel, and hang on to it.
I'm just finishing a book called Mapping the Brain. And evidently there are reasons for this. It relates to something my wife said this morning. She said, you know, that experiences in her when she was just a kid, I mean, you know, some condemnation or something she took as a condemnation became, she said, a seed of doubt. And she was full, she said she's been realizing recently that she's full of these seeds of doubt that color the way she might react even 70 years later. And the brain evidently is compartmentalized. What's kept in the, you know, the various components, the cells actually are set so that, and they can be changed. They are changeable, but they're set until you actually do something about it. It isn't that you know better, or, you know, what you know, it may be set in that brain as something that happened when you were 5 years old, until it's extricated and shifted. You know,
I think it's how imagery helps.
Yeah, imagery is very much
through that. Yeah.
I have to finish the book, then I'll tell you more about it. No, it's the most extraordinary thing. Evidently, you can have brain feelers. What do you call those things? You know, stuck in the brain, electrodes, stuck in the brain of an animal, and you can pick up imagery from certain areas, and it's actual imagery. You print it out, and it can be very similar to whatever that animal is looking at right now. That blew my mind, quite frankly. So we're carrying real image, and that's why dreams, you know, I'll be having this dream that's based on local, you know, recent activity, but it takes place in a place that I lived in 50 years ago. And not really, but you know, my brain tried to shape the old house, whatever it was, in a way that sort of made sense to, you know, I mean, it's just weird. But some of my dreams, I wake up and I look at that and I thought, you know, it's just incredible how the brain put that together.
Yeah.
It's a fun dream, though.
Ani, you had something you want to say?
Did a few years ago, as in my contemplative creativity, I came up with this about reframing your
Oh.
life, because I realized that's really essential, fundamental. I mean, it's the giving and taking of life. I mean, it's I think framework is like, it's fundamental. It's the context within which we choose to think, interact, feel, choose.
Yeah.
And we don't talk much about framework. I think if it's grounding to have a framework. You know, to cultivate a framework within which you can decide, choose.
That's what religion does for people.
Yeah, but that's not as contemplative, creative. That's not. Yeah, but that's kind of that's on a menu of things to pick.
Oh, it's not yours. It's something that's given to you that somebody else created, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so when I put this together of my poetry.
Ah.
Let me, the first one is quiet. Come to the sacred sanctuary of silence within. In the presence of the quiet, in the presence of the quiet, I am one with all that is. In the presence of the quiet, my heart in love now lives. In the presence of the quiet, my pain is now released. In the presence of the quiet, I have joy-filled peace. And it just goes on, but it's therapeutic. It's self-healing. It's my practice. And I'm very grateful. In the presence of the quiet, my answer now is found. In the presence of the quiet, my life's miracles abound. And it just goes on. And I guess I just wanted to share that.
I will be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, Ani, I think you brought up a wonderful point about framework. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an anchor to me, or that's the framework. I mean, as I am careful and thoughtful about the framework that I use for living, that's the foundation, that's the essence of the quality of my life, is the framework I choose to live within. And I'm so grateful that I felt led to develop this thing. Because it makes me teary to go through it again, to share it with you. It's really amazing. I don't want to dominate, but I'd love to share more. Listen to the still small voice in every moment of time, and you can hear the sweet perfection of life's eternal rhyme. God, call me to the quiet. Help me hear your call. Call me to the quiet so I can give my all. Call me to the quiet so my mind can hear what you're speaking from my heart. Follow without fear.
It's beautiful.
Stillness. God's voice in the stillness of your heart. Listen to the stillness. God's voice singing love songs to you. Hear it. Hear the stillness. Listen in the quiet of your heart. God's voice in the stillness of your heart. And it just goes on, but I love this. Today, I forgive myself for holding back the dawn of my own light. I forgive myself my reluctance to be great. I forgive myself for keeping gifts I've been given to share. I forgive myself for not loving myself as much as I deserve. And it just goes on. It's a whole, it's a big compilation. Today I forgive others for not finding the light within and for hurting my loved ones or me while stumbling around in their own darkness. I forgive those who are driven by fear to fix a world that needs only their love. I forgive all who are living in illusions of past limitations and can't see the light of their current liberation. Today, I forgive every denial of, deflection of, distortion of, and distraction from the light within us all. I should do something with this rather than just have it in a notebook for me.
You could publish it. Self-publishing is easy.
At least you're reading to us. That's doing something with it. And
Yeah, you could do a podcast and read your poetry.
I'll connect with you and talk with you about how to do a podcast because I'd love
It's
to.
really simple.
I mean, I could go on, but I don't want to dominate. But I love to read these.
They're lovely. Yeah. I don't think we really understand our own frameworks half the time. I think they're really invisible. And I think it's really useful to make them visible. I know it took me, well, just until recently, really, to really get that my framework was life, that's the measurement I have always used, what brings life. I mean, you can kind of tell, you can feel the enlivenment, you can see it in others or not. And you know, when we do things, even politically, you know, does it make people happy to withhold food from them because they don't have a certain criteria? It doesn't feel life-giving to me. There you go, you know? And I've never understood why other people didn't get that, because it seems so obvious to me. But it's not obvious because people don't think about it and they don't understand the framework they're using. I mean, maybe the framework is punishment. I do think I loved what you said about safety, Robert, and I do think that that's actually a soul age issue. And understanding that has been really helpful for me. Because to your point, Ani, of forgiving people, they are where they are, and a 7-year-old is not 21 and is not 75. They just aren't. They're 7, and they can be a really good 7 or a really rotten 21. You know, so accepting that 7-year-old as 7 and being with that 7ness is great fun. It really works. But when you try and make it something that it isn't, it's just a mess. It's just a mess. Having expectations that aren't real for that particular person. The isness, seeing what is real, is so important. Just being present with what that is. And maybe that's the bliss of aims, because you can be really present with what is. Goals want to trump over whatever is there. You're clumping over it to get someplace or making it be different or contorting it in some way. But aims just say, well, let's go here. and the others going, well, not quite. And so you move. You're not quite there, but you're still going in the same direction. It's just a much nicer way of thinking about things. Yeah.
I haven't checked in to CNN or any place in the last few days about what's happening in Gaza, in Israel, but I do want to follow that. It's very a very profound dynamic on Earth right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I mean, it's a place where we get to choose again between life or death, and not just literally, but spiritually as well.
Is there anything in the last, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 days?
I haven't been paying attention either. I don't feel the need to know on a blow by blow basis. I do know that, and I'm not going to say his name right, but the guy who was killed in Russia was profound. That the impacts of that really have huge effects.
What guy?
That is something that I actually felt viscerally when he died. So there, Alex Nueve, something like that. He is a man in Russia who was contesting Putin and had no fear, was able to call him out, to humiliate him, actually, to shame the illusion of power that Putin holds. And he had a huge following in Russia. And for some reason, which I still do not understand, because he was poisoned by Putin. They put poison in his underwear so that he absorbed it, and they saved him from that. And then he went back to Russia knowing he was going to be put in jail. And I don't understand why he did that. I don't. But he did. And so they put him in jail, convicted him for 19 years, and then they moved him just recently to another prison in Siberia, someplace. And then he had an accident and died. And it's truly, yeah, that really had an impact energetically on all sorts of things.
I,
So
I, I I've been itchy, emotionally itchy since the the thing started in Gaza, because I lived in Israel for 2 years. I love Israel. The land, the history, the first time I was there on a tour with my church, with the church, it's like to drive by David's tomb. It's like King David's tomb. I mean, it's all real. I mean, it's the Bible. This a little boy I met in Israel. I asked him what he learned in school that day or what he did in school. And he said, well, we had history class. And I said, well, what was your book? And he said, the Bible. The Bible was his history book. Because it is.
Sort of.
Blew me away.
Mhm. So Mark, what is the needs wheel?
It just, as we're talking about safety, in terms of that word came up, I think, in the context of frameworks. I just come across this recently in some other things I was doing, and I like how in the safety dimension it points to some things that feel really helpful to potentially know why frameworks are helpful in terms of like boundaries and the other things. There's like 8 different
Yes.
aspects that they identify as being part of safety. Just came to mind as we were speaking.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Mm.
Yeah, there's it reminds me of another wheel too. Emotions are really interesting because they've got all these nuances, you know? And so, yeah, you can say you're joyful, but then when you really get down to it, there's flavors of that. Yeah. Um, and being able to name that really, really helps. Um,
Certainly in context. So, like for example, as you're saying that, it comes to mind that I think it's Eskimos have 16 different types of snow, but
right.
then there are some cultures that don't distinguish between the colors green and yellow because it's not relevant to them. So it's only helpful potentially to get so precise with different emotions if that's what our culture kind of needs. It's a sort of a secondary or maybe even like a more primary question to go, well, what is that sense that we need to be so delineating? What does that say about us as to who we are in this moment? Not to say that it's not valid, but it is also telling us something about who we are. So, for instance, like if we go to the Eskimo example, clearly, like differentiating different types of snow is very valuable to them. And so, if we find that it's helpful to be very precise about emotions, then it's saying that we really value the precision in emotions. It doesn't universally validate them beyond our culture, which I find intriguing.
So where I would go with that actually is a meditation that I often use with people called focusing. And all it is feeling what you feel inside and being able to name it. And when you name it, it changes. And that allows you to walk out of situations and stucknesses in a very easy way. And you don't have to do anything about it. You just have to recognize what it is. And that's where I go when I think about precision with emotions. That it helps you be present with what is, and you can't release something unless you're present with it. It's not possible. So the more you understand and can see where you are, then you can go, oh, I don't have to hold that anymore. Now I understand it and I can be where I am. I think that's part of our fragmentation. This, in an interesting way, this preciseness keeps us in place. And when we release that, then we get to be all of who we are. instead of just that little thing that we're holding.
I like that. Being present to something is the only way to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's absolutely true. You cannot move through anything until you're present with it. That's the thing about trauma and all of that, where it's the resistance that keeps us there. Yeah. Yeah, when you are able to be with it, then it releases it. It finds its place. You're keeping it in a place that is not necessarily useful with that resistance. And that's what I hear in your poetry, Annie, is being present with things.
That's what poetry kind of is. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
like you're right, heart to heart, face to face, mind to mind, with whatever it is. I mean, that's the magic, the beauty of poetry.
Mm-hmm.
It's presence with it. I'm going to do a podcast. I appreciate your idea and encouragement. Why not?
Yeah.
I love to read what comes out of me,
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
comes up, and I've got like so much,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
and it just feels so good to my cells.
Yeah. Self-expression does. I mean, I when I was in Boulder, there's a museum there by a greeting card company, actually. And there is a particular room in that museum. And around the ceiling are pictures of people, and they're pictures of cowboys and pictures of Indians. And when I first saw that, I came out with such grief. The Indians are so in love with themselves, and the white people are so in love with themselves. It is shocking, the difference. Just shocking to see it. And it's so true. I mean, that's the whole thing. The wanting to degrade all of those who are so pleased with themselves. How can they be pleased with themselves? Who are they to be pleased with themselves? And wanting to destroy that because we don't feel pleased with ourselves. And instead of doing that work to bring ourselves forward, we want to destroy. There's another life and death thing that is just so prevalent. And that's where Gaza is. That's exactly where Gaza is. How dare they be happy? How dare they exist? How dare they?
Mark, say something about what you put in the chat, the word interoception.
Yeah, it's just what giving your attention to a part of your body is called that's different to like feelings, which tend to be more from the outside. Like when
But
you feel something on your hand, that's like a feeling. But when you're like noticing a thing that's within you, it's called interoception. How do you say that word?
interoception.
Yeah.
I still don't understand what you're saying.
I mean, I would simply invite, if it's of interest, just to look at what the definition of that word is. It's
I
pointing
definitely
to,
think it's a hot word.
yeah,
I want to bring it closer.
yeah.
Interoception.
So, Mark, let me see if this is what you're talking about, because we just did a meditation this morning that was very interesting, very interesting. So, just take a minute to relax in yourself. And take a breath in and then breathe out through your mouth. And a breath in and breathe out through your mouth. And a breath in and breathe out through your mouth. And think about your eyes, the shape and feeling of your eyes in your head. Think about your ears. Can you sense your ears? The top of your ear, the lobe of your ear, where it connects to your head. Can you feel the space between your ears? The brain inside the ear canal. The distance from one ear to the other. Can you feel the difference from your chin to the back of your head? Can you feel the space of your head? Can you feel the space of you, your whole skin, all at once? Take a breath and then come back. Is that what you were talking about?
I would say mostly, yeah. Like some of the things on the edge might have been a little bit less than that, but I'm also inclined to give a reflection, which is I found it quite hard to sense static parts of me in isolation, like my earlobe, for instance. It was hard to kind of sense or feel that. But when the language was pointing to something that was that is something that moves and kind of has a dynamism to it, that felt a bit easier, as did like when you said feel the space between your ears, like to be able to like notice one thing over here and then notice another thing over here, that kind of came alive. But the static, like if you said like imagine the tip of your nose or some part of us where we don't have like a strong ability either from a muscle sort of.
Oh, feeling your eyes. I mean, who
That was a
thinks
good one.
feeling your,
Feeling your eyes in your sockets. That was a
yeah,
great one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Right, interoception. That's it.
You know, an interesting point that goes along with that is your eyes are taking in the tip of your nose all the time, but
Yes.
you never see.
Yeah, yeah.
Then how do you know it is?
I mean, I
Just pay
can see it.
attention. You can see it. Yeah.
You have to want to, otherwise you will never see it. It's
Yeah.
blanked out. But
Yeah.
I can see it now because it's.
You're right.
I can't see the tip of my nose even when I go cross-eyed.
Well, you have to have a big nose.
Well,
What?
and you have to have soft eyes, not hard eyes, soft eyes, to let it come in instead of forcing it.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm not successful at that. Yeah.
Well, look, I've got to get on to something else. So
Yes, it is time, isn't it? Yes.
this has been lovely.
Yeah.
Yes, it has. Thank
Very
you
good.
all.
Look forward to hearing more of your poems, Ani.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
But it's like I had a deep bath just sharing it with you.
Mm.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.